Hey you, I'm Ali Amo, and this is the A Lease on Life podcast. Happy New Year for 2025. This is the first time I'm jumping on this year, and we've got a very interesting topic that we're exploring today. So I'd like you to join me in welcoming back Kendra Angela. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited for this year.
Well, after the episode you did with us last year, that got a lot of attention, even on YouTube, because it was the psychic edition of Ask Me Anything. So I rapid fired everybody's questions at you, and it was brilliant to get your perspective on everything. The beauty of this episode is that it was born from what happened naturally. So the story is, I posted something on Facebook middle of December last year, and it was, I'm humble enough to know I'm not better than anybody and wise enough to know that I'm different from the rest. And I inquired with a specific friend of mine who's all about the ego stuff, because I was trying to distinguish where in that quote my ego is hanging on and not my higher self, say, for example. And Kendra responded with something that was so perfect. Can I actually read verbatim what you commented? Because I loved it.
Yes.
Ego will have a heavier energy to it and self will be light. If you are grounded, ask yourself, truth, Ali, is this ego or self? The heaviness or lightness is your answer. Now, many individuals believe ego is bad and self or spirit is good, but that's false. As humans having a spiritual experience here on earth, we require our ego to survive, as it's what drives masculine energy. Spirit drives feminine energy. The key is understanding that the ego needs spirit or self, and the spirit or self needs ego. They are like a marriage. Sometimes one leads and sometimes one follows. The key is maintaining balance. If things are too light, we get airy-fairy and exist in la-la land. If things get too heavy, we tend to start acting selfish and detached. Humility can actually only exist in a grounded and balanced individual. Too much self or spirit leads us to be out there, and too much ego leads to arrogance. Honestly, are you as impressed as me at your own brilliance? That was so perfectly articulated. It was just like a bitch slap in the face of reality. And it's so simple and so clear, and it's almost obvious when you hear it. But unfortunately, you kind of need to hear it sometimes to see it for what it is, or to recognize it for what it is. But yeah, impressive orchestration of experience and thought. But I am so curious, because I'm always with the questions. How did you come to that understanding?
So when I started to do a deep dive into my connection and really sharing with people and building my business.
What connection for those people playing at home who may not know?
For my intuitive connection, for my connection with the universe and how I receive information as a professional intuitive reader. So I was deeply connected with my spirit team, and I would have a lot of conversations, or as some people would just refer to as, channeling information for themselves.
Mm.
As I was exploring more and diving into the metaphysical community and looking around and seeing what kind of practices were out there, this really all happened when I started to really hone my energy healing skills. I kept coming across a lot of information in the metaphysical community that really wanted to talk about ego being so quote unquote negative. I don't ever use that term. It's not the way I operate, and it's not the way I coach my clients for a number of reasons, which we can get into a little bit later. But
It's
it was
basically a yin yang situation, right?
Pardon me.
with the ego and this. It's
Co-
basically a yin yang situation with the self. It's
kind
part
of.
of the whole self. Yeah.
Yes. But it's widely taught and widely talked about in the metaphysical community that you're here to overcome your ego, and you're not. You're here to find balance and learn how to work in a partnership,
Hmm.
which is actually deeply connected to your life experiences. You have partnerships with food, with your job, with everything outside of yourself, the people, right? And it's about maintaining balance through all of those while honoring yourself. And so that teaching of ego being bad, quote unquote, never really sat well with me. And so I started to dive deeper in conversation with my own guide. And this was literally something that I channeled through probably when I was about 27 or so. So close to 15 years ago. And it's something that stuck with me really deeply. And when I work with clients and we have that conversation, it shifts a lot of things for them as they're moving through their journey and their own connection to self.
Is that largely, well, in part, a large part, due to the fact that they've come across this myth or misinformation about this ego being a negative thing and something you got to kill, the ego death, destroy, overcome, all of that sort of belief?
Yes and no, because part of it is because in the metaphysical community, we aren't taught that when you go seeking information, you need to learn how to identify what resonates for you, where you're at on your journey, and take that and leave the rest. So people are asking the questions, is this concept true for me at this time? Or is it not? Is this something I should take with me on my journey at this time? Or is it not? So that may resonate deeply for some individuals based on where they're at in their journey. And that's okay. But
That's actually a really good standard practice when you come across new information on all aspects of life, anything and everything. That's a good practice to
it is.
start implementing.
In my book that will be out this spring, it's something I literally open in like the first paragraph is not everything in this book will resonate with you, and that is okay. But the fact that you are here means there is something in here for you that will help you on your journey. So I will teach you how to figure out what resonates with you and use that for the book and leave the rest on the pages. And that's how life is supposed to be taught, but we're not given these tools when we're young. And sometimes people don't ever figure it out. And sometimes it's a lot later in life when it could be extremely beneficial in our teenage years and navigating into our 20s when we're trying to figure out, who we are, what we're doing, what's right for us. So I would say that yes and no. It is because of that. It's also because I don't think a lot of people are teaching this concept. I've never come across anyone who's taught it the same way that I do because it was a channeling that came from my guides. So it was an understanding I came to on my own because of all that information that I was coming across that just was not landing with me.
It made me think when you were talking about your book, because I've had feedback from people that they need to read it a few times or they just want to read it a few times to really take things in. And it made me think about there are movies and TV shows that you can keep going back to, and it's like you're peeling back layers. You always have a different perspective and you take knowledge in with you, but you also pull knowledge out that you never saw before, or you weren't ready to before, or you hadn't had life experience to prepare you to have the perspective that you take. And it happens with books, it happens with movies, it can happen with songs, with artworks, poetry, anything of that nature. And that's the beauty of having things that you can keep consuming on a regular basis. And there are people who do that for different reasons, but it's also a good practice when there is things that seem to kind of go over your head a little. You keep going back to keep drawing things from it. And it was interesting how you explained the ego and the need, because it's not something that you, I think, could survive Earth life without. I've mentioned this book and this quote about it at least 10 times already in this podcast of mine, but have you ever read Seth Speaks, The Eternal Validity of the Soul? It was one of the, I think it was the first channeled book, at least in Western society. It was published in, I think it was 1969, or it come out then, somewhere around then, 1970. It was written by the channeler speaking it being documented by her husband at the time, but the being that she was channeling, the culmination of all of the lives or the bodies he's doned and discarded on Earth, as he explained, the accumulation of all of that he calls Seth, because we need the name. That's something that we need. And he was saying about the ego, it was meant to be an aid, but has been allowed to become a tyrant. So what happens in your mind when you hear something like that with respect to your understanding?
So I would agree, because our ego is connected to our physical body and is connected to spirit, right? But our spirit is our life force. So without our life force, our body will die. So an ego is an aid for our spirit to be able to come and gain wisdom and collect information to have soul's growth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
If we neglect our body, our spirit doesn't want to live there anymore. So it just leaves and we move on, right? So it's a foundation for your soul's journey. And a body is an aid to your soul's journey.
Mm. That's a beautiful yin yang way of looking at it too. You know how they say when you turn two, the reason we have the terrible two situation is primarily because a 2-year-old thinks that they are the center of the universe, and the whole concept of I want, I need, give me, you know what I mean? It's me, 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 me. And they don't listen to reason and all of that sort of stuff, because it's just about what they want, what they feel, all of that in the moment. It's almost like that's where the ego not is born, but starts to come out. I just think from my own life, my own childhood, when people say things or do things to you without your ego, it's like your spirit's being crushed, and you'd have no urge to stand up for you or to believe in you or disbelieve in anybody else. It kind of helps you build your self-esteem, and your sense of self is strengthened by the ego. So I can understand why it's the aid, because without it, I don't know if I would have survived everything. I don't know if it would not have beaten me down if I didn't have such a big ego. But at the same time, I can see how that happening over time, the ego becomes the driver, and it shouldn't be in the driver's seat. It should be in the passenger seat, kind of like what's that saying about the backseat driver sort of idea. They should be able to pipe up when need be, but like zip it for the most part, if that makes sense.
In reality, you're on a road trip together and you got to take turns driving. So when one's tired, the other needs to hop in the driver's seat. And when the other one's tired, then you need to switch spots. It's right. And when one's driving, the other is navigating. And when one's navigating, the other is driving.
So as a fully grown adult, give me a realistic situation where you're like, no, this is where the ego needs to be driving the car.
Okay. You are in a leadership role at work. And your team, okay, there's a difference between a manager and a leader. Okay, we won't get too
But
deep.
even that alone, automatically, you think back to past people, you see how easily it becomes like, nah, mate, this is my road trip. Get out. Like, it's easy for that cycle, like the ego, to keep going, and it just becomes this. You're stuck in an ego cycle and you can't get out. But I want you to keep cooking
So
while I'm seeing you in the kitchen.
how I would kind of talk about it is like, if you're a leader, you really are there because you trust your team to do their job and you're just there to assist when they need it.
Mm.
But if you're gotten to a point where your team is taking more rope than they've been given, then the ego needs to step in, right? Like the spirit needs to get out of its own way and letting these people figure out the journey on their own. And the ego needs to step in and say, like, that's enough and take some of the rope back. Because essentially, if you run out of rope, everything is going to fall apart if it's not connected, right? So
Mm.
I talk about a lot when I'm working with clients that ego is a lot of the harder leadership skills. And spirit is a lot of the softer leadership skills. So like confidence comes from ego. Drive comes from ego. Creativity comes from spirit.
See?
Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
I see where you're going.
s-
The compassion and the empathy. Yeah, you can tell the harder and the softer.
being able to be direct is driven by ego. But being able to have compassion while you're being direct is what keeps a conversation balanced with an employee.
Mm. And the boundary setting, because if you're too much into the empathy and the compassion and the listening and the understanding, you can be taken for a ride for 45 minutes, or it's like, I should have cut this off in the 4-minute mark and redirect and tell you this is not what we're talking about here. This is what we need to be doing. Let's stay focused. I understand it is a balancing act, but I can't not see the need for the self or the spirit to lead. And it's like the ego is like you know what I mean? Like the hype man when it needs to show out, if that sense. I don't know. This is my
Yes,
own belief cycle I need to be looking at.
but not necessarily though, because it might just be, Allie, that you are working through deepening your connection, right? So, like,
Yeah,
depending on
absolutely.
your soul's growth requirement in this lifetime is going to depend on where your focus is going to be. So, if you're focused on personal development and growing yourself spiritually and having a deeper understanding about concepts that are not so openly talked about, not so openly looked at, where people aren't pretending they're not going on, then I would see how you would come to that. But there are individuals whose soul's growth experiences aren't that in this lifetime. They are here to master skills of the ego. So it just depends on where your journey is taking you. And however
Mm.
you need to look at it to keep your balance is perfect just the way it is. There's no
Well, that
right or
makes sense.
wrong
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Because I've had this, I need to rein it in for a long time when it comes to my own ego taking the wheel and taking control of the road trip, let's just say. But because I certainly resonate with the former of what you just described, my partner definitely the latter. So I can see even within the relationship, we're both learning to balance the opposite whilst being together. And if you remember when we did start writing our books together, the web of life is an entire philosophy, and it is looking at stuff that is below conscious awareness. And it's another thing, like you were saying, with the whole ego explanation versus self. When you see it, the web of life makes sense. I don't meet people who don't get it. It's that obvious, but you need to see it to understand it, to see your relationship with it, to be able to see everybody that way. And to be a leader in a field that when you talk about people who call themselves life coaches or mentors and all of that sort of thing, not in the spiritual community or metaphysical at all, in the personal growth industry, in the self-development industry, once you go down that road, it's very easy to let ego run the show, right? And you might have people's names popping into your head of people who let, instead of the content speak to people's self, they let their ego push. And then it's those ugly things that the ego can get lost in, like the greed, which is a huge problem on this planet. And then when you start sacrificing people's, because I don't know about you, and I'm sure you'd be on the same boat as me that we go sailing together, but you're not just here for you. You're not here to help yourself grow. You're not here to help just yourself develop. You see that you're on the same mission as me, right? It's personal and planetary expansion, right? Yes. It's about getting people to be who they were born to be, not what the world has made them become. So when you're breaking down those paradigms or breaking those cycles, a part of the battle that I'm sure you come up against, because there would be specific people in mind who keep repeating the old cycle that needs to be broken, even just in the context of ego. There are names that you could name and be like, you don't want to think like this person and don't listen to what they say about this. That doesn't negate any positive information or any deep, true, insightful, full of wisdom things that they say. But at the same time, then it's like almost not an ego battle, but it's like you don't want to get into that realm where you're trying to pull people down and pull yourself up. It's just about expanding the consciousness of as much of the collective as possible, right?
100%. It's like I would never tell someone not to listen to anyone. How I would respond to that is so like, and trust me, I've had clients come to me who have paid thousands for top-notch therapy
Yeah.
and explained to me that it was making their situation worse. And not because the therapy was wrong or the individual practicing was wrong, but because their energetic connection wasn't in alignment. So
Even if you just think about the energy that you're feeding to what is typically a negative, we'll call it negative because the emotions and the thoughts and the actions associated. But when you've had a negative experience in your life that you're trying to move through and move past, doing it spiritually, metaphysically, energetically can speed up that process. Whereas doing the traditional talk therapy, those kinds of modalities will sit and dwell and feed so much energy into that experience, trying to draw it out. And there are elements of greed that come up with this because the longer you can take to handle something, the longer you have them for, the more money you make, the more your schedule is filled, blah. There's that aspect too. And that's that field of, it's not just psychology in that department. It can also be psychiatry too. They just use medication to do the same thing. Yeah. But at the same time, some people do need some of the clarity and the insights that come from those more long drawn out experiences. But it's really sad when someone comes to you and can have these massive breakthroughs and clarity in a much shorter, much less expensive situation than what is typical in the system, so they say.
and but that's what I was gonna get at was when someone comes to me and says like, hey, I've tried therapy, I've tried 5 different therapists, this isn't working for me. And I'm like, okay, so you sat in this for 5 years and you recognize it's not working for you. So then why did you continue it? Or when you were meeting
Mhm.
with therapists on your first session, why weren't you asking yourself, does does this experience feel good to me, even though you're addressing hard things? Because the experience should still excite you. It should still motivate you to go, even if it's hard, if working with
Mm.
that individual is in alignment with what your own personal energy requires at that time.
It's like going to the gym, like a personal trainer. It might kill you at the time. You might be sore afterwards, but you're like, I'm getting to where I want to go. Or going for a run. That made me think exercise. It probably did the same for other people too.
Yeah,
Mm. That
like
makes sense.
literally you dread going, but you still want to go because you know how good you feel after. And that's what
Mm.
keeps you going. But if you're going to be in the presence of anyone that isn't just therapists or do anything that leaves you feeling crappy after, why would you continue to do it?
Mm.
It's not in alignment with what your soul needs. It's not healing you. It's actually adding to the heavy energy in your field, putting more weight on you to carry.
Mm.
Ellie and I were talking before the show, and she was asking me, how would you know if it's spirit or ego talking to you? But the simple tool of identifying how to identify what person, place, thing, or situation is right for you is learning where the energy in your body responds to whether things are truths or a lie. And so that would mean yes or no. It would mean yes or no go. It would mean it's a truth or a lie, right? And your body, because it receives information before your brain can process it, will give you clear signals on whether something is energetically aligned for you. And that is the first step into knowing that. But if you are just honest with yourself in any situation, you can know what does not feel good and what does feel good to you. Because what feels good to someone else may not feel good to you based on what you energetically require for your own journey because you're at different places in life. And so I was saying to Ali earlier, I don't use positive and negative when I
Mm.
speak or when I coach, because what is a positive experience to me could not feel good to someone else. So I use feel good and not feel good when I'm coaching because that allows the client to decide what is right for them.
And then it doesn't actually put those labels on it. I always had this saying before I started writing my book. It's all goad, like GO from good and AD from bad. And like it's a road, you know how it's going up and down or it's going forwards and backwards, however you want to look at it. At the same time, at all times, those things are both like mutually binding.
Yeah.
It's all good and it's all bad. It doesn't matter. It's that blending. When you said at this time the same thing come up for me, it's like if somebody's telling you a story or a piece of information, you know how you get goosebumps? It's funny because at the time, yes, you recognize that that story is giving you goosebumps, and you may notice that you have this, I wouldn't say heavy, I would just say hard emotional charge while you're hearing the story. Then the goosebumps start, and you will, it's very hard, I think, for people not to say anything because, oh, that gave me shivers, that gave me tingles, I got goosebumps. But they don't necessarily recognize why or what it is that's giving them the goosebumps or why that's resonating with them. Which begs the question, something that's just come up that I thought I'd ask you, Miss Ask Me Anything Psychic Edition. If someone gets goosebumps hearing a story or a song or whatever, Is that the soul's recognition of information that they needed to hear, or like, cook on that for a minute.
For me,
Mm.
it's divinely guided information. So either I'm connecting directly, and here I go, I'm just my team loves this question because my whole body just lit. I'm directing connectly to that person at their deepest level,
Mm.
or the divine is sharing information for me, with me, through that individual in a very direct way.
Mm.
Regardless of what it is, I know that that specific moment in time is a divine connection to the universe. It's very clear. It's a very clear connection. There's no muddying the waters. Does that make sense?
It does. Given the context of this conversation, and it's funny that I'm seeing the glitching that I am on the screen at this time. Oop, don't lose it. What was I thinking? I would argue then, based off what you said and the way I see it, that it's like at that moment, egos left the building. It is soul to soul. It is this universal information exchange with the participant, the recipient, whatever, that kind of connection. And it may be that what's been said or what's happened, because I'm thinking it's not just in conversation, it can be songs or specific parts of movies. There's sometimes, like, you know how in movies there's a coda, it's like an unspoken message that sits in that movie, what the core of that movie is. It's like everybody's cut the shit for that moment, and that just happened is so real, and your truest self is recognizing it. And it might be true for you, that person may have said, or whatever happened is so true, and you recognize the truth in what they've said, even if it's not meant to tell you anything other than that is pure fact. Like that is the truest, the realest. Does that make sense?
I understand.
You wanted to, you got more?
I
Tell me
do.
more. I can, cool.
I,
All right.
I, I, I hear you, and I see your perspective very clearly. But I would like to interject that in that moment, your ego is actually participating flawlessly with your spirit because it pulled itself back from trying to take over your brain and turn that into something it wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, because if you don't sit in that space, wow, I just realized if you don't sit in that space, enjoy that like wow moment that you're having, and try to not read into it, feel into it, your ego will take over and just brush it off like it's not like, or read into it all about you as this self and not the higher meaning, the deeper meaning of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
So it
really have to let
can
go of this. It's this or that. It's both. And when the ego can just be and let all of the weight or the heaviness go and just be with it, that can help the ego evolve within itself, right? To keep feeding those experiences more energy, more practice of doing that.
it's literally
Mm.
like it's the most literal form of being present that you can have, where your spirit's not running away, your ego isn't running away, and everything is existing together in perfection at that moment.
Mind, body, soul, and spirit is just
Yeah.
purely focused in that moment and on
Yeah.
that thing. Wow.
And like we're in that space right now because my body is just like
Yeah.
my guides love this. Like they're just, girls, you are just digging this. Oh,
I noticed like the whole left side of my body just like, yeah, as soon as I like went like this, I'm just, yeah, trying not to draw too much attention to it because I don't want my ego to ego. I'm just like, no, just be with this. Yeah. You have taught me so fucking much. I've totally forgotten there's an audience that might be watching or listening. I'm like, it's just you and me, girl. Before I forget, we've been going for 40 minutes. Can you believe it? Wow. So the practice that we were talking about with the ego and the self, I had a thought I'd like to run by you that come up this time, didn't come up last time, because it can be quite difficult to get into, I wouldn't even say the habit, just even starting to implement this in day-to-day life. Because you know how you hear those sayings, count to 10. Well, they tell kids this, count to 10, put your fists in your pockets, or just, you know, the 4 breathing exercise, like 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold, and do that to, when have you ever in waking reality just seen, you know, in the midst of traffic and road rage, just somebody in the car just taking long deep breaths with their, like, it doesn't happen, or people standing in line, or when shit kicks off and when you're in the midst of your shit, people don't do these things. You know what I mean? And it made me think of Matthew McConaughey, the green lights. You know, you got green light, orange light, red light. Could you, if you don't have the time, or if it's just not something that you can do in that moment, like the time that it would take to really ground center for that moment, ask yourself for the truth. You can always do that later, but in the moment, could you ask yourself, is this red, orange, or green? To know if it's green, yes, this is what you need now. Stop, this is not what you need now. Orange, this is something you'll need later, or something like.
sure. Yeah, 100%. It it's something that I really work on with clients to develop their own recognition and their own techniques based off of the base that I teach them because
Mm-hmm.
some people are visual, right? So if you're not as strong in your body awareness, you might receive your information visually and you might just know like that's flashing red, that's a no-go or that's not a truth or and that would be perfectly fine. Or they can train their body awareness to connect to the imagery so that it's easier for them.
Isn't the idea though, just in cultivating self-awareness, you cannot stay in the mind, you need to connect to the body, right? You have to notice your emotions, you have to notice the sensations. And what you suggested as a practice is definitely tapping into the sensations and feeling the weight, or just the positioning, the location on your body, like if you were mapping it.
Yeah, because we have to remember that our body is outside of us and it receives energy before our ego and brain connect to interpret what it received, right? When we're speaking, the sound waves travel outside of us in and through. So your body, those sound waves hit the outside of your body all over first. So therefore your body will react to whether it's a truth or a lie, or whether it's something you should participate in, a conversation, or, you know, maybe someone's inviting you to an event or whatever. Your body feels the energy behind it before your brain even receives any of that. And obviously it's happening fast, right? But
It's like the gut feeling. Yeah.
when you become in tune with your body, you recognize right away. And as an intuitive reader and an energy worker, that's how I connect. That's how I receive information. That's only when my guides are sharing, they're pushing energy at me. And that's how I pick up messages from them, is based on how my body's reacting to what. it is. I'm like, hey, like this message, when I get a message, I'm like, hey, and then I check with my body. Does that connect? Then I know if it's truth or not. So I think that that's important for people to understand. And when you're talking about emotions, there's a couple of things.
Mhm.
You can be experiencing emotions that don't belong to you, that you
Yeah.
absorb through your energetic field. So you need to learn how to identify those. But when you're
Mm.
releasing them, you're pushing from the inside out. So you're also going to feel those. But you need to learn how to work with your body to identify, is this my emotion to heal? Or is this something I'm aware of that I picked up on someone else that has attached itself to me? Like there's a lot of different things that go into that. But having body awareness is huge. And
Mm.
taking care of your aura in order to have
Mm.
proper body awareness is even huger.
I'm feeling that in the chest space because I've been told that directly and specifically like 5 years ago. But the new part is how you explained the process of moving. It actually makes sense because any emotion lasts max 90 seconds and you can breathe and allow it to just pass through your body. You notice the sensations. And that is part of what I do in my coaching and in my teaching as part of understanding the emotional component of any given cycle that you're stuck in. However, if the emotion hasn't come from within you and I or anybody has picked up on emotional energies from others, because it's come from the outside in, you said you actually have to push it from the inside out. And I was like, oh, wow. I never thought about it like that. I just thought my awareness of it and just like, oh, well, that's not mine was enough. But energetically, I could tell you that that's not working because I still feel other people's heaviness. And I'm like,
So,
why am I not motivated and being me? Like, yeah,
but it's
it's
not
just
that you
like,
actually have to push it out. You actually have to make a give yourself conscious permission to let go of your soul onto it. It
mm,
will remove itself. You're holding on to it because you resonate with it deeply. So it's probably also indicating something that needs healing that feels the same.
oh,
You know how to handle that emotion, so you hold on to it for others because it's easy for you to handle because you already know how, then that person doesn't have to hold on to it.
yeah,
Like
that's
you
the
want
belief that I have. Yeah, yeah.
the thing is that when we do that, other people aren't forced to heal their crap.
Or even feel it because they're like, I just feel lighter around this person. I'm happier and yeah,
Not, but that's not true though, because then they just keep cycling through because then they just start
spiraling
feeling
with
it
their
again
cycle.
and then they shut it
Yeah.
somewhere else, right? Like they're still going to continue to feel it. It's never going to go away. So you're not doing them any favors by doing that. And now you're actually harming yourself, but not helping them. So it's a lose-lose situation.
This is probably something that I should do on my own, but out of curiosity, I'm going to ask you, is the belief and the holding on to the emotion for them, is that more of a ego or self situation?
I think it's just more of connecting with an energy that's familiar to you, and it happens more subconsciously until you're addressing those things consciously. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because energy attracts like energy, right? So until you
Mm.
become consciously aware you're carrying that energy within you, you can't become consciously aware that you're picking it up from others. and inviting it into your space because it's just coming at you because the energy is like, hey, I know you. I'm going to go hang out over there. And then people who aren't as consciously aware, right, keep coming to you and not understanding why it feels so good to be around you because their energy just gravitates towards you because, misery loves company. More people at the party is better type of deal, right? So if your lines are open and saying, hey, I can handle it, or, misery loves company over here, then that energy just flows away from them.
Hmm. I'm going
And
to need
that's
to
why,
listen back to this after I edit. I think this is an app I think I can listen to a few times and get different layers of understanding.
I mean, this is really deep, Allie. Like, this is like 5 more podcasts. But
100%.
there's so much here. And then when it comes to spirit and ego,
Mm.
I would really just like people to understand that having good body awareness can help you to navigate when your spirit needs to lead or when it is leading or when your ego is leading, because your ego can give you good direction and it might need to give you good direction in your life, but you need to identify, is this sense of urgency ego-driven fear or
Oh, this is a
spirit-driven
good
guidance?
question. Say that one more again because I know that is a brilliant, brilliant. Yep.
Is
Go.
this sense of urgency ego-driven fear or spirit-driven guidance?
And I think that asking yourself that question will always tell you, you'll know immediately when it's fear. You will not mistake the two. It is clear as day. It is night and day. Like, you know what I mean?
It's as simple as if you have body awareness and you know how to do that in yourself, and if you don't, reach out to me and work with me, and won't take very long for you to have the tools to move away on your own and handle this. It's simple to figure out as to whether it's light or heavy, and then you'll know. Is this ego-driven fear or not?
I'm going to finish up with one last question since you mentioned the 4-letter F word. What is the relationship in your understanding of ego and fear?
Fear is ego's way of protecting you.
Why does ego get it wrong?
But there is no right or wrong.
Yeah, I know. I knew as soon as I said it. Do you get where I'm going though? Does that make you know what I mean? Why does it get carried away so much?
Because ego likes consistency and repetition, so getting stuck in patterns. So
And safety and security known, not the unknown.
Yes, properly though, your ego will bring up fear less because it gets comfortable being uncomfortable when you're growing all the time.
This is why they start teaching children to take risks earlier on in life in school so that they get comfortable with risk taking, but that's become not obsolete, but yeah, it's less and less.
Yeah.
So I see how
So,
the fear can take over, and then you get adults who are terrified of going anywhere, doing anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Or stay in a job that's miserable because it has a good pension or whatever. And it's like, okay, so really you're going to be miserable for the rest of your life? Right? Because you're afraid someone told you, or you have a weird sense of loyalty because of how you were taught. But that's what it is. It's pattern-based behavior. It's comfortable energy to hold you back.
Wow.
It just gets to the point where people can't function in that Your ego just wants to hold you in patterning because that energy is comfortable, because it's familiar, it's easy, right? It knows it, it's like how we talked about earlier. It knows how to handle it, just like the emotions. It knows this pattern. It knows it can do it. And it's not that your ego doesn't know you can't do something new. It's that your ego knows if things don't work out the way you want, the emotions it's going to have to work through and face, right? It's that type of thing. So ego
It's
Ego
not ready to
tries to
confront.
avoid being uncomfortable is what it comes down to. Where
Like,
spirit is like, come on. Like,
this is what we need. This is what we came for.
yeah.
Are you not entertained? Sin. And you know how this whole rejection therapy, people like screaming shit out on an airplane, like, hey, we're ready to like in front of everybody and embarrassing themselves. I had the same activity that I did with a group of mine with confidence and just going out, getting ready to be shut down. But eventually you'll get a yes, but you just throw yourself out there. And a lot of us first time round, it was brilliant. But you keep doing these things and you become resistant to the fear. You learn to embrace it.
And you learn to be authentic and you're like, cool, if you don't want me, I don't want you either because I want someone who wants me for me. So if that's not you, then there will be the next person. And if I'm not looking, how am I going to find them? Type of thing, right? Like you get
Mm.
this confidence in loving who you are and wanting people to be in your space who love you for being authentic. It's as simple as that.
And when you are authentic and you're in the moment, yes, we love seeing that so much. And the reason it's become so popular is because the ego gets carried away real quick on how you look. I see it like, even on podcasts, just how much effort people are making to look a certain way every podcast. I started it myself with like the gray hairs and, at the start, I never wear makeup. I think we have that in common, right? Like it's very rare if ever, right? But at the
No.
start, I was putting on mascara. I don't do that. Now I'm lucky if I put on lip gloss. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is max effort you're going to get from me. You're lucky if I brush my hair. Like, it's just a frizz ball. But
Mine
you
probably
need
has a
more
toothbrush.
realism.
Yeah, like this.
But
And you
that's
know
the
what?
beauty of putting it away.
I actually literally just posted this on Threads not that long ago. The word professionalism and the energy behind it is actually
Ugh.
starting to get super annoying because me showing up like this to a meeting with a client has nothing to do with my professionalism. It has to do with me showing up as who I am. And that's probably why my client is attracted to me because they can feel safe to be themselves.
You're going to love this. You know what my goal is for my first on-stage keynote speech?
To wear your slip.
I'm rocking.
Oh,
Oh, I might get to that eventually, but my start off is me in my Nike jumpsuit that's like camouflage, like Aliamo in a camo. Literally, I'm going to be the most not dressed up person there on purpose because I want them to repeat the cycle. I want them to feel everything that they feel, seeing the person coming on stage that is doing the keynote, who is the least dressed up person there, who made the least effort to give a shit about how they look to other people. It's about being themselves, being
that's not what
comfortable.
you're not there to be judged on your appearance. You're there to be judged on what you're delivering and offering to the people. And
The
I'm just
beauty
not
is
there to be judged at all. You're there to share
that's
your
the truth.
wisdom.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
ideally, that's the point. It's going to happen anyway. This is the cycle. And it's like the best way to get them to see how deep these cycles run and how global they really are is everybody in the room will feel the same emotions, will think similar thoughts, and might say, if I didn't bring this to anyone's attention and make it part of the subject of the keynote to illustrate my point before I introduce them to the web of life philosophy, if I just did this and racked off without going into it, how many of you would end up talking amongst yourselves and making judgments, making comments, doing the gossip thing, assumption, all of the stuff that comes with it? And like, it wouldn't matter if the most brilliant shit in the world come out of my mouth. You'd be like, can you fucking believe what she wore? Like, you know what I'm like? That's what it's about. Look at it.
That's bizarre. Not like me, who would be like,
That's my girl.
I'm gonna have to say, I gotta hear this.
This is my people. Yeah, exactly right. I know the feel.
Microphone and ask where you got your outfit because I need to get me one of those. And does it come with all the wisdom?
Well, there's some people who feel like that sense of jealousy, like I wish I could live that free, or I wish I got out of bed and didn't give a shit. Like you just rolled out as you. That's the way I want the world to be. Can you imagine it? Wow, we have covered such a variety. Wow. I love this. Honestly, thank you so much. And when did you say your book's coming out again?
It'll be in the spring.
So I'll come back at you. You can jump on for another ep when you're actually releasing the book, and that would be great for me to do.
I'll be right here.
Can't wait.
I'll get a stand.
Just for the audience, we actually met writing our books. We both started together. So thanks for being here with us for this ep. New ones will come out to you every other Thursday. Speaking of Thursday, if you'd like to join my free masterclass to break a cycle in 2025, the links will be in the show notes. Please thank Kendra Angela for being with us here today. If you'd like to connect with her, if you'd like to pre-order her book, if you'd like to hit her up on socials, all of the links will be included in the show notes. You take it easy, beautiful people. You'll hear from me soon.